All right. So it
Yeah,
looks like we got some people coming on. Got
yeah,
Chris.
we'll probably have
Chris.
some trickling in here. So yeah, we got a good little group. So yeah, so I'm down in Clearwater, Florida right now.
Oh, you
Down here
are?
for
That's
Yeah,
cool.
down here for a couple days. So I'm like wedged in the corner of the hotel room here that does not have the background of the beds and everything else. So literally, I was like trying to turn the desk around in the room here and try to find something that was good. But
You're
yeah,
good, Dave. No problem, man. It looks good. I appreciate it, brother. So
yeah. Well, cool. Well, we'll have people trickling in here, but yeah,
yeah.
I'm excited to have you on, and I'm just fascinated with how you've grown your business, and you run this business literally on just hours a week, and
Yes, it is. How
you're
are
doing
you?
just so much in uh sorry, I was just muting some people, but your sales are just absolutely amazing. So a lot of people on here, they may not know who you are. Some may not. But like, how did you get started in real estate? I know you've been around for a million years, and some of these people may not realize that you're like this long-term real estate legend.
Well, a million years, it kind of feels that way, David,
Feels
now.
like it, right? Yeah.
So yeah, so I started obviously in the business many years ago, actually 28 years ago now. It's 1994 is my first year in the business.
Yeah.
First year, I should say. That's why I went full time into it, David. Prior to that, I was monkeying around a little bit with it, but I didn't really know what was going on. So that's when I jumped into it, and the full time basis was back in mid '90s. So that's how I got all started, and it was interesting how I got started in the business was literally I was in a I actually David, I went through a bankruptcy
Mhm.
from my father and I had electrical contracting business together. I went through a bankruptcy, and I was in a position where we had a large general contractor fold up on us. So I was trying to figure out what I was going to do next, and saw an advertisement on a local TV station about an upcoming real estate seminar in Cincinnati, Ohio. And
Yeah.
that was the beginning of things. Of course, if you remember too, David, back then, bro, I mean, there wasn't any ads we got on our phones or
Yes.
anything like
Yes.
that. It was
Yeah.
it was either TV or television, and that was
Right.
it. So
It's funny. I try to explain that to people because, I started in 93 and went full time in 2009. And it was so different,
oh,
the,
100%.
the idea of buy low, sell high, right? That hasn't changed, but everything else is just light years different from when I got started. There was no
Oh,
information. There was nobody jumping on Zooms like this. Like, it just didn't exist.
no, it was crazy. I remember I got started and I went to that 3-day training. And basically, when I got out of that training, I was, oh man, I'm going to make this happen. And one of the things I learned there was wholesaling. And it was funny because when I came back
Really?
to where I lived at over in Springfield, Ohio, I
Mhm.
started talking to people on wholesaling, and they go, what in the world are you talking about? This is like
Yeah.
something totally foreign. Nobody even heard of anything like that. So I
Right.
went to my attorney's office, talked to them like this, and they thought, "Are you nuts? You can't do that." So that was more of a reason for me to do it, because
Mhm.
they're the ones that told me you couldn't do that. So I said, "Well, kind of screw it. I'm going to do it anyways." So that was my attitude towards it. So basically, I went out there and started to try to figure out some things. I ended up actually too, David, I ended up hiring a mentor from that event. And the thing is, I had no idea how I was going to pay him. And I ended up borrowing my mom and dad's credit cards to be able to pay him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Well, how many times have we all done that where we're like, we just know the right thing. We know that we need to do it, and we're just going to figure out how to do it later.
yep,
Literally that jump out of the plane and build a parachute on the way down.
100%, dude. So,
Wow.
and that's what I did. I basically got started in it that way. And, really what happened on that day, I was in a position where I had to go out, people have to realize that literally I went through a bankruptcy just months before that. And I had to go out and figure out a way to start jamming on things to generate cash. And, I was out pounding the streets, literally. I was out running, you know how that is, man, running from property to property. And
Yeah.
I was over
Remember
there.
those days.
I remember taking boards off windows, crawling through the windows, all that stuff, you
Yeah.
know, and I just done whatever it took. It didn't really matter to me. And, you know, all these people throw up excuses, and we got it so easy nowadays compared to what we had it back then. And I remember driving for dollars. There was no list. Only list we had was the one we created. Okay.
Yeah.
We were out hustling on the streets. We would basically get the list, David, write it down on a tablet. Then I would have to drive down to the courthouse building, go in the courthouse, and I pull up the microfiche. You remember that? The microfiche,
Yeah.
and you pull it up, and then you scan and you look down at the addresses and tax mailing addresses. It would literally take me close to 6 to 7 hours to look up 40 to 50 addresses. That's it. That's how long it would take. And that was our mail list. That's how we done that. And
yeah, but out of that 40, you'd get 3 contracts because there was no competition.
Exactly.
Right. So there's trade-offs, right? You know?
Yeah, there's trade-offs. So, but that's what we would do, man. It was constant hustle like that. And I'd done that for, you know, several years, just wholesaling. And next thing I know, I said, well, I'm going to do the fix and flip model, man. So I started doing that. I would go out and, you know, I realized that, look, I was wholesaling these deals, and I realized there was an opportunity for me to get into fix and flip model. So that's what I started focusing on next. Started buying those deals. The only problem is I didn't have any money to really do the fix and flip model. I had build up some capital, but not enough to do all the rehabs. So I basically started working with private capital, and I had no idea what private capital was.
Yeah.
So no idea. I just went into a meeting one night, and literally it was a meeting. It was right over by the Dayton International Airport. I still remember it was a little old bank building in Vandalia, Ohio. I remember going up in front of the room with a flip chart, and I just basically laid it out on the flip chart. And I said, here's the scoop. I'm buying these deals. I want you to write a check. I want you to shut up and wait for a bigger check. And that's basically what I told him. And that's how I got started in this. So that's how I
to do that.
Yeah. So I got that. That's how my private money side started, and it just continued to grow. And then I just continued to expand that side of things, David, over the years.
Wow. So here's the thing, because I obviously started later than you. When I started, I at least had ListSource or, you know, there were a couple generic or old timey sort of sites where you could at least go look up somebody's information, or the property appraiser had a website. So I at least had that, so I didn't have to do the microfiche. But you know, this fantasy I have in my head of sometimes I'll lay at night in bed at night and go, geez, if I could go back in time, I would start doing this like in high school, like my junior, senior year of high school. But then the thing I always get stuck on is, holy shit, how do I look up people, and how do I get values? Like how back then, how would you value a property? How would you figure out what the ARV is, you know?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, here's what we had to do on that is you just get a really good real estate agent friend, and that's, they pull all the comps for you. So that's what we did.
Really?
And when we first started, David, you know how that was done was basically I would go to the lady's office every week. She would give me the MLS book, which was just like a phone book. And she would give me, she would give me the book. She goes, here's your comps. So
it's sort of like working in a non-disclosure state. You're flying blind, but so are the buyers. Like everybody's just guessing.
Yeah, it was 100% that. That's all we did. We were, you know, it's, you think about today when we can go in, just bam, pull up a value just like that. And literally everything we had to do was 10 steps.
Yeah.
So everything we had to do is,
you know, yeah, what I found is because we went through those things, and, you know, and when we started in really full time in June of 2009, is that, you know, because we had those trials and tribulations, and I tell people, like, now I'm that old guy, get off my yard, you young whippersnapper, right? That, you know, it teaches you a lot of lessons. And, you know, like nothing that we're doing is new. Assignments of contract, novations, all the things. They're, all right, who is it? They're, you know, it's the same thing that's been done for 50 years. It's, you know, the marketing and how we do, you know, getting the information out there. That's the only thing that's really changed. And just the speed of information has gotten a lot better. But yeah, definitely. God.
No, I just say, it was interesting too, David. When I first started, the way that we done assignments is nobody waited for an assignment fee to close.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, when I found the deal, I took the
Uh-huh.
contract. I called you up, David. I said, David, I got this deal. And if I had title already checked, you paid me the assignment fee right now. It,
Wow.
it was completely done. That's the way
Mhm.
we did assignments. That was because if you think about it, that's a true assignment. We're assigning the contract. But what
Mhm.
happened on it over time, everybody started poisoning this, and you get a lot of bad apples out there. So they kind of destroyed that for us. But our assignments were done on the moment. So as soon as you agreed to take over the deal, I got the
Yeah.
assignment right then.
Wow. And there was still probably a little bit of that going on in the mid 2000s where people were getting their assignment fees up front. And then I think there was a little bit of a shift. So for you, it was probably, hey, great. Jerry, here's this contract. You'll give me the assignment fee. Best of luck to you. Hope it all works out. Where it sort of shifted to more of a like a service model where we are, kind of deal, I don't know, I want to say coordinators, but that's not the right word. But we're the wholesaler now. We usher that deal all the way through to the finish line.
Yeah. It did change a lot. And I think too, David, what a lot of it was too, is just, you get people out there doing it the wrong way and they kind of ruined that for a lot of people. So,
Sure,
and
sure.
because that was the normal way of doing business when I first started in it, was
Yeah.
doing it that way. So, but yeah, so that's how I got started in this, man, was just back then, and really just grinding into it, and then started growing it. And here's the interesting thing. I think about this too, David. I think about everybody talks about, in the business now, and literally, David, back then, even back in the 90s, I was still doing $10,000 a month out of the bedroom in my home, with
Right.
prices, where my average wholesale fee was 1,500 or $2,000.
Talked in a long time because during
Oh,
college we had a bit of a falling out.
hold on. Got it. People keep unmuting themselves. And so in the beginning, it was just you, right? It was just you running around, hustling, just doing deals.
Yeah, it was actually my wife and I worked out of our home,
Yeah.
and we started that way, built it up. I did have some other family members kind of help out on some things, and
Yeah.
we grew that. And then I think,
Mhm.
David, as you know too, I've shared this before. We grew this thing to the point, and going into the year 2000. I mean, we were rocking pretty hard. We had a lot of stuff cooking. We were
Yeah.
we were actually written up in the local newspaper about,
Really?
yeah, it was pretty cool. I got the article somewhere. I need to get it and post it in my office. And it's
Yeah.
kind of funny because I'm actually standing out in front of our own house with a big white "We Buy Houses" sign.
Yeah.
And so we had, and back then we didn't even know where we could get those. So we had to have them all custom made. So our "We Buy Houses" signs cost us about $120 to make.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah.
So when you were just starting out and you knew you wanted to grow, what was the first person that you added into your organization, your company?
So the first person I really added in was, that was kind of funny. It was a gentleman that literally was delivering Chinese food to my house. And he kept coming to my house all
Really
the
thought you
time.
did a good job delivering Chinese food.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And he just kept asking me, he said, "Man, what do you do? What do you do?" So
uh,
I ended up, I said, "Dude," I said, "you want to come to help me out?" So I ended up putting him to work. And what I realized was I kind of made him a mini me. Okay. And I realized that, David, what I could do is I could get so much more production done by having someone else
right.
go out there and mimic what I was doing on things. And so I would have him start going out and checking out properties, and just run through inspection checklists and so forth like that. Take pictures. The only problem with the pictures, we had to go get them developed. So, so
Yeah, again, see, another weird thing that you would never dream would be a hurdle, right?
yeah, absolutely. So we start growing that side, and so that was one of my first hires. And then, of course, my wife worked with me in the business. But I think you, as you know, Michael, or excuse me, no, David, is my personal story is, that was in the year rolling in year 2000. We were rocking and rolling, and then that's when my wife and I found out, we're having a baby, and we were all excited. And of course, I had the major thing happened to me in my life where, you know, my wife at the time became very ill right after our son was born, and found out that within 2 hours after he was born, we found out that she had kidney cancer. And it was you know, it was typically found in her cancer typically found in kids by the age of 5. And but it was a massive thing we went through, and I ended up, we had built this brand new home, our dream home. We had all this stuff going on, all that, boom. I worked my ass off and all that stuff, but it is all of a sudden changed there, guys, in a matter of just days. We had the baby boy, and next thing I know, we were in a position, we found out she had cancer, and went through major surgery, and lost her kidneys completely, and was completely dependent on dialysis. And the new home we had built, I ended up moving out of it. I ended up moving into the Ronald McDonald House, and I ended up living in the Ronald McDonald House for over 4 months, because she was in the hospital the whole time over in Columbus, Ohio. She was actually treated in Children's Hospital. And then we finally got her home after 4 months there, and thought we were stable, and but she was dependent on dialysis, had to go to radiation, and twice a week, and you know, it was unbelievable. And you know, I know I've shared this with you before, Bud, on things, but we got to the point where you know, we thought, like I say, things were moving forward. I was taking care of her home. So you got to remember, on this side of things, I had built up a business and then just stopped, you know, like that. Now, fortunately, I had cash flow properties that kind of carried me through on this side of things. But within a few months after she got home, we went and done another CT scan and found out the cancer reoccurred, and they just said it was everywhere and told us to call in hospice. And, you know, my first wife passed away 10 months after my little boy was born. And so here I was in a position where, you know, started dating when we were in high school, and here we are, built the life together, built the business together and everything. And it was just, everything just changed that fast. So, you know, and I looked at it, you know, it took me about 2 years to get back to the point functioning, and back to the point where I did end up getting remarried to my wife now, Joyce, and now I ended up moving over towards Dayton, Ohio area now, and live in a little town called Germantown. And yeah, and it's so I had to, once I started that, I started really rebuilding the business, David, and built that out, you know. And
so when you started rebuilding, did you decide immediate, like, I'm gonna go bigger, I'm gonna build this bigger, better, stronger?
Yeah.
Like the $6 million man, right? Bigger, better, stronger.
You know, after I started rebuilding on things, David, I got to the point where I was like, you know, I was rehabbing a lot of homes, and what I wanted to do was go full blast on the rehab business. So I ended up at one point I had like 4 full-time project managers working for me, doing multiple rehabs. And one day I said, and now you got to remember, this is after bankruptcy, the death of a spouse, all this here I built this big machine up, and next thing I turned around, I said, I freaking hate it.
Well, you know, that happens a lot. Like we think we should do something, or, you know, this is what other people are doing and they look happy, so if I do that, I'll be happy too. And that's just not always the case.
Yeah. But here's the, you know, the whole thing behind that, David, what I realized was this, is I built this massive machine, but I built it the wrong way.
Really?
Yeah. And I started building this machine. I built it based upon, basically, if you came along, I hired you based upon your skills.
Okay.
And that was it. I wasn't based upon core values. I wasn't based upon my culture that I was building in the business. I had no idea I was building a culture, but the culture was growing no matter what. It was just a culture I didn't want.
Right.
And I built this machine up, and then next thing you know, I said, man, dude, why I don't want to be doing this. I got to the point I couldn't even stand my own team. Okay. Yeah. So I ended up, what was crazy, David, on this is, you know, that guy I told you about that come to my house doing Chinese food.
Yeah.
He became the best man at my wedding. and been work with me for over 12, it was over 12, 13 years.
Yeah.
And I end up having to fire him.
Really?
So I had to fire him and a big chunk. We cleaned house. About 75 to 80% of the people were gone.
Yeah. I've done that a couple times. It's challenging.
But what I realized, David, was this, man, was I realized that I'll tell you, we're here. It was a kind of light bulb moment. I drew a line down the center of a piece of paper. On one side, I wrote real estate. The other side, I wrote business. And what I realized is my whole career up to this point had been focused on one area, and that's real estate. And what I mean by that is being a professional deal chaser. And all I was doing was chasing deals. Now, I understand that in the beginning, you might do that a little bit more, but
Sure.
I'm telling you, all of you guys are on here, you have to start making that shift, because it's a big lie to be out in that position of constantly being the grinder all the time on things. You got to start looking at this as a business. And
Right.
that's one thing I regret. I wish I would have done day one. So I turned around and I wrote that down. I wrote real estate one side, and the other side I wrote business. I said, wait a minute, if I can focus on building a true company here, a company that has overall operating systems, a company that has processes, a company that has people in the right boxes and in the proper people, that I'm not putting up with excuses and all this crap that goes with it. And if I can build that type of focus, then real estate becomes nothing more than a product.
Right. The widget.
Right? It's just like being in the cell phone business.
Yeah.
So what I did was I focused on that side of things and started changing the whole game. Because then I was looking at, now let's really try to build a company that's not all about Jerry all the time. Because I mean, you know how that is, David. You know that too, bro. Because we can build this machine that just consumes you and stuff. And it's like, why not build a machine that I get to oversee? I get to look at the metrics. I get to make decisions. So I'm working more on the business. And then, you know, what a lot of people don't talk about is the next level, and that is working above the business. Because then you start going into the business of, then you start playing chess versus checkers. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Because I went through that for probably too many years. You know, I'm the best person. Nobody can do it better than me. And I'm so smart. And that may be true. And it probably was true. But you just can't multiply, and there's only so many hours in the day. You just cannot possibly do everything. You know, you have to find a way to put an organization in place and have some people that can duplicate your efforts, because otherwise you will just burn yourself to the ground.
Oh, 100%. And that's exactly what I did. I burned myself to the ground on that side of things. But you know, it was interesting on that day. But then I started making a whole shift on things. And then, as you know, I ended up eventually, Ashley came on board. And Ashley's she's my COO now. She actually runs my company in Ohio. She runs it from Colorado. She's been with me going on almost 10 years. And so she's, you know, what I've learned on this, guys, is that you can take this to whatever level you want. You can build it and you can scale it, but you cannot scale it if you don't learn some of the main things. I'll tell you, David, why we got everybody on here. There's 4 phases that I've learned that you go through in this business. One is your launch phase, right? So that's when we're just starting up, right? We're kicking it in gear. Some of you might be on here where you're saying, man, I'm starting up, getting things going. Then you start going into, you know, and then you start making some deals happen. Then you go into the, what do we call the growth phase? And the growth phase is you're going to start hiring a few people. Or you're going to put some processes in place. It might just be virtual assistants, whatever it is. But you're starting to move on that a little bit more. Then what happens is we talk about third phase, but I'm going to skip over that for a minute. Because what happens most of the time, we're in that second phase, in the growth phase. And then all of a sudden, we get this basically this brain fart that we want to go to the next level. And that is basically the fourth phase, and that's scalability. We want to go to the scale phase. So when we go to the scale phase, everything sounds cool, right? We start going in multiple markets. We start doing all this stuff. And next thing you know, we're into it for 12 months or something like that. And we say, what's going on? This is like, it's going crazy. And then all of a sudden you think, well, screw this. I just want to scale this back down just to a couple of people. Right? And I know several of you probably been through that. You know why? It's because we skipped the third phase. And that third phase is what we call the constraint phase. And that's learning how to put constraints on you, your business, your team members, and all that. And just some examples on that is like one is like accepting certain margins for your deals. You have to have certain margins that you stay within.
Sure.
Another thing is like a lot of people, I see them do it all the time. They go, look, I'm going to rehab. I'm going to buy and hold. I'm going to do multifamily, right? We've seen this how many times, David? And
It's the shiny object, you know.
it's like going down an 8-lane highway.
Yeah.
And then what you have to realize is the only way you can scale is you got to take that down and narrow that. So you have to put
Sure.
constraints on really the how many lanes you're going to go down. And then I started learning to put constraints on myself. Like I can't steal the ball from everybody. I have to step out of things. I have to let other people do things. And what was amazing on that, the more I'd done that, the more the business could grow. And then on top of that, the more it removed me from the day-to-day side of things. Now I'm in a position where I've only averaged about 2-3 hours a week in the business. And that's really on a high level of things. I've removed myself from all that side, but you guys, you will never get there unless you learn how to put constraints in place on yourself, on your business, on your team, and everything you do. You can't, there's like, I always tell people, there's almost like a million ways to make $1 million just in real estate itself.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
right. So it's like, we can't do it all. And I've tried all that. So with more focus, we become like that. The more it becomes a repeatable process that can be scaled, and you're able to also not even get repeatable, but then you can get predictable results. So, and dude, that's been a lot of what I've learned over these years. And I'm like, it's crazy, but people have to realize that. And I think another thing too, David, it's what I'm seeing too now is something I never thought I would ever see in this business space. And that is a lot of people always, they would say, well, you're doing wholesaling or you're doing this and that's not a real business. David, and dude, these businesses are trading now.
Yeah.
Through business brokerages, they're being sold. So what this tells you, these are cash flow companies like any other business, and they're being sold. So people need to wake up to this, but you could, because you can build this into a machine, you can scale it and you can sell it.
Right. But you have to have good operations, good processes in place behind it.
100%, man.
Yeah. So that's something we learned, a while back that, and I do a lot of different things, like you, but in our wholesale business, we wholesale. We stay in our lane and we wholesale. This is what we do. The rental company is different. The transactions company, like those are different businesses and there are different people over all of those. But yeah, this is our lane. We stay in our lane. We do one thing. We are a high speed wholesale company. This is it. This is our focus, right? One of the other things that bothers me, and I'd love to get your input on it, is there's so many people on Facebook or wherever, internet, always throwing around, but Warren Buffett says I have to have 7 streams of income. And it drives me absolutely bonkers because that's someone's, there's 2 things. One, they're trying to do 7 things at once, which they haven't mastered the first of them yet. Mainly that's it, right? They haven't figured out how to do any one of those 7 things good. And, I don't know if it's a psychology thing. You're smarter than me. You can, maybe, but I don't know if it's because people don't want to dedicate the time to being excellent or extraordinary at any one of those, however many of those income streams, and they just want to keep bouncing around. And then they see 4, 5, 6, 7 months later, this just doesn't work.
Oh, 100%, Dave. I see it all the time. Dude, I used to do that all the time. So, I'll tell you, one of the best ways you guys got to look at this is you look at our business models like a production line in a factory. Okay. And you got the beginning of the production line, the end of the production line. So just like for us, David, if we do wholesaling on that side of things, we got to build all the systems. We have to put the proper people in place and we crank the machine up. Now, here's the thing that most investors do. What they do is they set that production line up, But just like you said, they're running the production line. Let's say, for example, running Toyota Camrys down the production line. Right in
Yeah.
the middle of the production line, they decide to throw a Toyota truck in there.
Yeah, yeah.
So what does that do to the entire production line? It
Oh,
throws it
brings
off,
everything down.
it shuts it down, right? Okay. So what we have to live, there's nothing wrong with having some multiples like that. But remember, like David was saying, it's a separate production line that we create. And you can take that, you can fire that up, get that well oiled and running, boom, set up another production line. Nothing wrong with that. But they're completely independent of each other and they
Right.
fire like that separately. So if one is not working that day, the other ones are working and firing and are not dependent on the other two or three
Right.
or whatever it is.
Yeah, and in our companies, we don't have cross-pollination. The people that run our rental business are not our wholesale people. Our wholesale people do not work in the transactions company. You know, the coaching, you know, all the other stuff, they're all just different people so that they're not distracted all day long trying to do too many different things. So, so man, so speaking of, tell me, I know you've got a lot of stuff going on. Tell me about all the things you have going on.
Well, yeah, we got a lot of cool stuff. We
It
obviously
must be a list. You have to look at it because you got so many businesses.
Yeah, we have, our main, of course, our core real estate business. We do the, wholesaling, the innovation side. That's our big one. We still buy and hold some, not as much as we used to. I was really heavy in the buy and hold for many years. I've sold some stuff off, but we still have those side of things. But that side is pretty well on autopilot for me. Okay. I've removed myself from the day-to-day side of things. Ashley oversees that. We have our different departments that handle things. David, as you know, too, I mean, I know you had some team members come and visit us actually on that.
Yes,
So,
I did.
and so that's one of our main companies there. We also have, I have my two educational companies too. And one of my educational companies is just under my name, Jerry Green. And what we do on that, guys, is we specialize in training people how to really put systems and operations in place into the real estate business and start be able to remove themselves from the day-to-day and the ability to scale the business. And that's what we really focus on that. And that's, I know that David, you've sent your team members here to my office too. We do a two-day event. We're live in our office right here. And we have a small group of people, typically no more than about 20 people come in. And we go through and we show them exactly how we run our business. They can mirror it. Then day two, we go through each person's business and kind of rip it apart and help them rebuild that. So that's another thing that we do. In fact, we got an event coming up on that. December 1st and 2nd coming up. We still got some few seats left on that. If anybody's interested on that, they can hit me up.
I'll drop a little link here when we're done. So, it's interesting, somebody who's been doing this for, a long time, 20 years almost, it's funny, operations and systems does not sound like the sexiest thing, right? It's not Airbnb, it's not crypto, it's not any of those things. But, Jerry, like you talked about, you just can't grow without good systems. And, I've seen that happen to me. We were going through, we were growing, and we didn't have that underpinning, that solid business structure in place. And what happens is you build, but it's a little bit of quicksand, and you fall back down. You build, but you didn't have the, your values in place. You didn't have, what the organizational chart was. And I get it. It doesn't sound, it's not the coolest, snazziest, thing that you're going to hear on the internet, but the reason that we've been able to grow a bunch of companies and the same way you've been able to grow and expand and have all these different companies is because you're able to get your wholesale business, your core business running solid and smooth so that you could step out of that and then start to, open up those adjacent companies that are going to kind of run parallel to it.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's, it's crazy on this, David. I see so many people get involved in this space, and just in the real estate space on things. And I never see, a lot of times they'll never make that shift. It's like, if you kind of look at it, it's kind of like the a lot of you that maybe do rehabs and stuff, it's kind of like the plumber you work with. who's always been driving he has one truck or two trucks, and he's out driving the truck all the time, doing the repairs, and he's always doing that, right? And he's done that for years, and he doesn't know any difference than that. And what he's done, he's caught up into that, and what it's prevented him from ever looking at the business on a high level and start looking at it as a true company. And that's the big thing that you guys have got to really look at on this. And when you start pulling back a little bit, you can take a look at this. But the problem is, David, when we're running so hard in the business all the time, you can't do that. You miss all that on things.
Right.
And, so that's really what I see on this all the time. And, it's funny. I even see a lot of people, they're out, they build a small rental portfolio or something like that. And then, I've had people come to my events before, and they have special circumstances where they say, "Oh, I'm driving around collecting rent." I'm like, "You're collecting rent? You're driving to a tenant's, you're driving to a tenant's place and you're collecting rent?" And I'll say, "Let me ask you, does the bank come and pick up your mortgage payment for you at your house?"
Well,
no.
Crazy.
Yeah,
it's not the highest and best use of your time.
Yeah, it's that thinking you can get trapped up into. And it's so easy to do that side of things. But I'm telling you guys, it is nothing but a lie to be caught up into that side of things. You've got to start looking at this and saying, "Hey, you know what? This is a true business, and I still got to start treating it that way." Because if not, you'll never get out of that trap, David.
Well, you won't get out of the trap, and you're probably not going to last. I mean, let's be honest. I've been doing this again for 20 years. 1993 was when we bought 93 was when we bought our very first house to rehab it. And I can't tell you, even in my own town of Chattanooga since 2009, how many people have come onto the scene and then now they're gone.
Yeah.
Because they don't build a business. They have hustle, and that's great.
Let me tell you, hustle.
Don't have anything sustainable.
Yeah. So I remember back when I first started on things, and then of course, I went through multiple market cycles here on things, and I'll never forget in the 2008 realm of things that a lot of the people I work with, and I'm talking a high percentage, I'm talking upwards of 85 to 90% of the other investors I work with went out during that time.
Yeah.
Huge amount. And when I started looking back on that side of things, I'll tell you one of the big reasons that they went out, and it wasn't just because of people being over leveraged, it was because they never considered this as a business. They considered it almost like a side hustle on things, and they never took the time to really look at it and structure it that way. See, when you do that, I want you guys to think about this, as we're moving into different times and stuff here and changing. If you don't take the time to do that, what's going to happen? You'll just be caught up in running all the time. You'll never take time to start moving things more in a strategic type way, where you can start moving things. You start thinking of cash flow management. You start looking at things, how you can deploy resources differently, people and things like that. And you start managing that way where it actually is a company, okay, versus just being that grinding deal chaser all the time. I know some of you might say, "Wow, that's me on things." Well, that's okay. I mean, that's the reason you're here, is to learn that stuff, understand that stuff. But you guys got to remember, there's very few people out there that have been doing it. We start getting up there. David and I are, some of the rare ones have been doing it as long. I mean, I'm going almost 3 decades now of doing this stuff. And I've watched it over and over again. And guess what? It repeats itself. It repeats itself. And the only thing that's changing is the technology and some of the ways we play the game. But other than that, it's the same thing. And people think that they're immune to this, and it doesn't happen. So
because like you, I'm fascinated by finding the older investor, the 80-year-old, 70-year-old, 90-year-old guy who's been investing, or gal, and asking them questions. And if you ask them what are their biggest regrets, they usually fall into a couple of different categories. One, I didn't buy more, right? That's, if you ask me, I bought 100 houses during the last recession. I wish I'd have bought 400. If I had any smarts, I'd have bought 400, but I will the next one. But the other one, at least for me, is that I didn't get my company set up well enough in the beginning. And my brother's actually on here. When we were first starting in Chattanooga in 2009, I tell people it was like getting in one of those little red metal wagons, the radio flyer, going to the top of the hill and arms and legs just out, we're just going down the hill as fast as we can, no control. We're putting properties under contract. We're selling properties. We're getting rentals. We're just doing stuff. And this is where the real estate as a drug gets you, right? Because I'm just making money. My life is amazing. I'm making money. But all of a sudden, you wake up from that 2 or 3 years later and you're like, holy shit, I have a real business that I need to figure out. And, the sooner you do that, the better it is. Because I didn't for a long time, probably longer than I should have. I wasn't great at bookkeeping and taxes and all of those things. And it just costs you. It costs you. You're not fundable. You can't go to the bank. And that's great. I got arrogant because I'm so good at buying properties, owner finance, that, I'll never need a bank. But someday your wife's going to want you to build a custom house and you're going to need the bank, right? These things, sooner or later, it will come up. And, I wish that I'd had the opportunity to come see you early on and get that figured out.
Yeah, David, that's so true, dude, because it's like, I tell people one of the things I tell them is to put yourself on payroll.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to be on payroll, dude. I mean, you put everybody else on payroll or some form of it, put yourself on payroll. Okay. You got to be able to do that. You're a cost to that business too. And you have to put yourself on that expense sheet. So that's one of the things I preach on that. And I've done that for probably 20 years now, have myself on payroll, and I've never wavered from that. So get yourself on payroll on things, and that's important because people will, they'll push that off. They'll say, I don't need to do that, and it's too easy. Next thing you know, you're burning all your money just on the marketing side. You're not taking care of yourself on things, right? And it just boom. So put yourself on payroll, be focused on that side of things. You'll see that be a big plus to you on that. And on top of that, David, now you've got some W-2 income that you can take when you go to the bank. So,
which, guys, I can't tell you, if a lot of you are new, like, trust me, as a guy who's been doing this a long time, that's such good advice that a lot of you guys are probably thinking, oh, that's dumb. Here to tell you, take it from somebody who's been down this road. Having that W-2 income, you will wish you had it one day. I promise you. And when what I had to do was I had to claim everything. Like, I couldn't take deductions for 2 years. And it cost me a lot of money. Like, I had to write some very big checks to the IRS.
Oh yeah, same here, man.
I could have just bought the house cash by the time it was the end of the day, by the time I paid all that money. So,
well, let me tell you this, David, I learned from the electrical business I was in that not only is it important to do your payroll or pay yourself payroll, but make sure you have a service handling that for you instead of doing it in-house.
Yeah. Yes.
Because they'll take care of all the special deposits and everything on that. And I personally know what it's like to miss deposits, and then the IRS comes after you, and then you have to you actually can negotiate with the IRS. I actually did something called an offer and compromise. So I've done about every strategy when it comes to all this stuff over the years.
Yeah, well, I went on the payment plan for the IRS twice, and it wasn't fun. And they were, zapping up about $1,000 a month out of my account just for not paying attention. So, so awesome. Well, listen, so guys, if you're interested in growing this as a business, 100%, I can't recommend Jerry's, event highly enough. I paid and sent my own people up there. I sent my VP of operations, Heather. She went up and spent a couple of days, came back with, pages and pages of notes, those big Post-it stickies. They were all over her wall for about 6 months. And, that really helped us when we reformed our company. Jerry and I have talked about this. We completely shut our company down and relaunched it in July of last year. And so that was in July. I mean, literally, we burned it to the ground, started over, had no marketing, nothing incoming. And by December, we had built it back up to 150,000 a month. So definitely couldn't have done that without you. So I do appreciate that.
Well, thank you, but I appreciate that too, bro.
the event that you had. So, you know, if you're just interested in hustling, don't go. Like, it's not for you. But if, you know, you want to grow this and you want to get it to something that's going to be sustainable and hopefully sellable, then, you know, this is the event that you need to be at. So I know I promised you I wouldn't keep you more than an hour, but does anybody have any questions? Does anybody want to unmute or throw something in the chat?
Yeah, we got a lot of people on. If anybody wants to jump in, that's cool.
Yeah, does anybody have any questions? Johnny, I see you there. Your camera's off, but I know that you've been growing your company. All right, Jerry, what's one of the, like, when you're talking with newer investors, what do you see as some of the common struggles other than the stuff that we've talked about? Like, what's something that you just see over and over and over again?
Well, I think some of the big things that I see over and over again is, well, one, a big component that we have a lot of people that come into our 2-day event that I see over and over again is them, one, not being focused enough on 1 or 2 strategies, you know, being very focused on that side of things. Another thing I look at too is a lot of people, especially right now, they get hung up a lot on, you know, they're like, well, I'm going to flip. And then what happens is, you know how that David goes, where you're constantly struggling for cash, you know, in between those. I'll tell you something that something I just told a group last week. One of the promises I made to myself was this, and this is after the 2008, is that I would never, ever close on another deal that I didn't get paid the day I closed. So what I mean by that is, even if I was fixing it to sell it, I always got paid some type of wholesale fee up front, because see, that's what allows you to maintain the business, to keep the lights on, to make sure you're paying yourself, paying your team, and keeping your marketing going, because I've done it the other way and it's no fun. There's big, huge gaps on that. So I always have done that. And since back, you know, like right after 2008. So always just make it a promise. I just made myself a promise that basically every time I close on a deal, I'm going to get paid no matter what. And then I can do it through some type of special financing that I can pull some extra capital out, or I can work with JV partners and be able to do it. And it's just a lot of different ways I can do it. So that's one of the big things I can tell new investors. And then, you know, my other big thing too is just be in a position where invest into yourself, invest into your understanding how to treat this as a business, but also be very sensitive to understanding your skills of how to convert people, you know, because David, as you know too, man, I see so many people coming in this business, and what happens is they get all these leads, but the problem is not so much leads as they don't know how to convert those leads.
Right. And, you know, I was going to bring this up earlier, and then Blake's got a question, but, you know, one weird thing about this, the culture, is everybody feels, and I felt this way a little bit too, I have to be the best at everything. Well, I'm not the best at everything. I'm not. There are things that I'm freaking really good at, right? But there are other things that I'm not, which is, so, you know, I invest in other people's courses and I go to a ton of events, and, you know, I sent my people to you, and I have another guy come in who might help with like salesy, you know, type stuff. You know, I outsource my PPC to a different guy. I mean, you know, somebody was, you know, someone that I'm coaching was asking me like, what do you do for this? I'm like, well, I outsource it. What do you do for that? Oh, I go over here. What do you do? Like, by the time I got to the end, I felt like I'm not doing anything, but I just really, it allows me to really focus on the stuff that I'm amazing at. And I can, you know, what's great about this is there's so many people out there that have incredible talents, and I can grab your talents and I can bring you in for a couple of days or send my team there to train them, and really, you know, just honestly just steal that expertise and, you know, then take it and implement it into my business. So yeah, don't feel like you've got to do everything, and that it's, you know, for me it was like, oh, I'm gonna a weakness if I'm gonna do, you know, whatever. So anyways, Blake, how are
you can do. Yeah, it definitely is. So
yeah.
How's it going,
Mr.
Dave?
Blake, I'm sorry I was keeping you on hold there. How are you, man? Good to see you.
Yeah, we're having a good time over here for sure.
Yeah.
Wait, Jerry, appreciate your time. Question I like when you're talking about constraints, I don't even know what the fuck you mean. Like when you're
No, hey,
saying,
dude, Blake, I appreciate you being honest about that. Here's the big thing what I mean on this, Blake. Okay, for one, is like for instance, margins on a deal. Okay. So I can go in, if you're going to build this out and then scale this into a real company, you can't be in the position where one day you accept 4,000 for assignment fee, another time you accept 20,000. You can't do, that's not a scalable model. What you got to do is you got to get in and tighten a small range. So you put constraints on that and you say, this is my areas that I'm going to put, and we'll put these constraints on this, and this is where we got to be. Also for myself, like I started to remove myself from certain meetings. I wasn't allowed to be involved in decisions on certain areas. So I put constraints on that.
but like when you're
Also,
constraining your team, so like margin and stuff to me is a process, right? Like one of my guys was asking me today, he's like, hey, we got this deal, like it could be 3,000. I'm like, throw that thing in the trash. Do not, I don't want to deal with that all. Any deal under 10 grand, we're not interested in at all.
well, see, the thing is Blake, what you want to do when I'm talking about you deeper constraints is that question should never even come to you. Okay. So
Yeah, makes sense.
okay, what we do, see what I learned on this is something that was interesting was I got this from working with a gentleman that you guys have all heard of Marcus Lemonis, I'm sure, from the show The Prophet. Okay. So I got a chance to work with some people pretty close to him on things and build up, have over 50 some companies. And one of the things I learned that from him, and he said, Jerry, one of the best things you can do is put constraints on your company. And I go, what do you mean by that? Kind of the same thing, Blake. You know, I was like, Blake, what do you mean by that? And he says, look, Jerry, he says, you can't make decisions on everything. And the decisions you should make, you should only make those typically one time a year. And then what happens is you put constraints on everything so tight that you can turn around and empower a team to run it without you. Because if not, what happens is, if you think about this, we get deals that come into our funnels all the time, right? All the time. And what happens, most investors suffer from what I call decision fatigue. And did these deals come into the pipeline? And what they're doing is deciding, should I flip this one? Should I wholesale this one? Should I, buy and hold this one? What should I do? You take all that off the table ahead of time.
Yeah.
You literally lay that out. You put the constraints in place and say, this is how we're going to operate our company. And that's what you do. And if you look at the companies that really build and scale, that's exactly what they do. They build it ahead of time and they put the constraints in place so they can remove themselves and the team can operate on a high level without asking you every single deal what goes on. Does that make sense to you, bro?
Yeah, no, part of that does. It takes it to a higher level. Like because we were trying to do too much during the summer about, well, let's buy shit creative and just all this nonsense. And finally, we just came back and said, we do one thing, we wholesale, but we will do innovation, which is just wholesale that thing on the market.
Absolutely.
But that's it. They're like, well, can we do an option? I'm like, no, I don't even want to do that shit anymore.
Yeah.
Like, because it requires time and effort. If I do that, it's still photos. It's a whole other process.
It is. It is.
I don't want to learn or I don't want to teach.
So you just can keep putting those constraints and squeezing that, man. And that's how you'll blow this thing up on things. And the cool thing about it is I don't have to go in and literally I have zero decisions when it comes to deals. I don't have to make those decisions anymore. Okay. And that's the powerful thing about it. Is you take yourself out of that.
That makes sense.
Well, yeah, and then you start doing your marketing just for the types of deals that you want.
Yeah,
so Blake, I went through the same thing, like because I can do creative deals and sub to and owner finance and all those things. And this is a struggle I have, right, man? I'm with you on this.
Well, I don't know how you teach it because there's not like
problem.
There's not a rule. They're like, well, what do you hear? I'm like, I don't know. I can do anything.
Yeah, yeah. So everything in this
because that's our mind. See, that's us.
Yeah.
But the problem is we can't put that into every single person that works for us. And that's our limitation.
I don't know how to build that into a box to teach, right? Like, and to teach that you have to have a deeper understanding of just real estate as a whole. Like I see people on Facebook posting this. Hey, I need this contract. I've got this creative deal and we're going to do a seller carry back of 500 and I need 25K and you're going to be in first position. I'm like, oh, well, you don't understand financing because you can't be in first position. The seller's in first position.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
in the first position after the bank, though.
Yeah.
Or-
And that's
Yeah.
that's more anyway.
Yeah.
I'm watching people.
no, man,
do
you're
notes
exactly right.
that's-
And-
So, the way that I've always understood scaling is I say, okay, take a tree, right? And cut the log in half. You got the rings of the tree. You're the center, right? No one's ever going to be as good as you. I get it. Like, it's my business. I'm the best one in my business for now. But, the further the rings get away from you, like, the first ring outside of me is my, is Heather, my VP of operations, and Narissa. There's a small core people. They're going to be the best. Like, maybe if I operate at 90%, they operate at 85. But the further out you get, the lower productivity you get out of them. So, when I get down to my acquisitions people, like, I can't teach them all the shit that's in my head. It's a squirrel's nest up there as it is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's just no way I can take what's there and box it up and teach them. You got to pick one strategy or the other.
Yeah,
But that was my problem. Is how do I teach them? Okay, we're going to start with cash, then we're going to go innovation, then we're going to go owner finance, and we're going to do subject to, and then like, it's just too much,
It is. And you
There's
got to
no
look at
production on there.
I'll never forget one of my other mentors I work with too. And he said, Jerry, he says, look, he says, do you want to run a business or do you want to run a company?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? And he goes, I can have a hot dog stand and have a business.
Mhm.
He says, but a company will operate without you.
It's interesting. Yeah.
Okay. So I want you, and the thing is, guys, it's never too early to start thinking about that. Okay. And then I'm talking about, I learned this from a guy who took a company through over $300 million a year in revenue. And it's like, guys, when you start looking at things differently like this, it really wakes you up to realize how much we're limiting ourselves because we want to be involved in too many moving parts.
Right.
Okay. And that was a big, big wake up for me. And it changed my game. Okay.
So I know this is a little off topic, but when you start getting into that, building a company, right? So it doesn't matter when you're thinking of implementing a process. If it's a Band-Aid, that's what it is, right? A process is not a Band-Aid. So a process is scalable. It's a system that you can do one deal with, but you can repetition, and so you can do a million. It wouldn't matter. I think the hardest part, especially for me, is I'm not an integrator, right? And so when I start getting into the weeds like that,
100%, dude.
I feel like I'm dumb because it just confuses the shit out of me.
Yeah.
Like
I have not figured out how to hire that person, or they're like, I kind of know what I need, but I don't do a good job of expressing it. Like if I want to do a web developer and SEO or whatever, I'm talking to people, I'm like, I don't know, but I struggle with hiring that key person that can actually implement and get the shit out of my head and then implement that.
Yeah, what, Blake, of course, the best way, obviously, if you can go that route, is to hire from inside. And that was what I did. I mean, Ashley started with me as an assistant. And what she did, she went through each part of the business. And so she got a feel of each area of that. And that's why she's now in a position almost with me for 10 years. But I've helped a lot of students out, hire people right off the streets on things. And the biggest mistake I think they make is they find somebody that understands HR. They find somebody that understands overall how a production process works. But what they don't understand is our business model, Blake. So what you got to really do is you got to realize that person it's going to take nurturing. It's going to take working, coming in and understanding your model and basically being glued to your ass for a good period of time. And because what they've got to understand is not only the business model itself, they have to start understanding how you think, how you make decisions, how you communicate to people via email, through phone, all this. And all that's super important. So like when Ashley started doing that, I would literally throw her my cell phone at her and say, here, answer the call. She goes, I don't know what to say. That's okay. You'll learn. Okay. Because what happens is the only way they become really good at this is they have to be that they have to be that filter and that buffer of all communications within your company. Okay. And then they start learning that side of things. But you'd be surprised how many people we've had, because that was a big challenge. I thought, man, how do we hire these people outside? And that's one of the things we looked at, was somebody who does understand overall leadership production side of things like that, but they have to come in and learn our model on things, Blake. See, cool. Anything else? David, anybody else?
Anybody else have anything? No?
Yeah, don't
All
get
right,
me
man. We'll look at
started.
that
I
right
won't shut
on the
up.
dot. What is it?
Don't get me started. I don't shut up.
All right, guys. Well,
Listen, bro, I appreciate it, man. So
no, dude, I enjoy. It could have just been you and me here, man. I'd have sat here for more than an hour, because I love talking to you about my man. All right, guys. So, hopefully we'll see some of you guys up in Ohio in December. I think it's an amazing 2 days. Like I said, I've sent my team up there, and what you'll learn from there and come back with, when you start to implement that in your company, you'll see that the growth just really catapults you forward, because I saw that in our business. So I don't bring people on to do these types of things if I don't believe in what they're doing and what they're offering. And, Jerry 100% is straight up good guy who's been around a long time and can help you shave some of that learning curve off. Because, if I could have done that way back in the day, I'd been even further ahead than I am now. So with that, Jerry, thank you so much. And thank you all guys for hanging out and spending the last hour with us.
yeah, thank you guys. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, David. Let me know, guys, if I can help you guys out. And I'm here. So, okay. All right, guys. Thank you so much.